as was done in the Gore and George Bush situation. The court must have coercive power. You must have a final arbiter.
Gentlemen, I want to take a short break, and when I come back, we'll put some numbers up on the screen for the audience out there to take part. But I want to find out from you why it is that for some people, proportional representation leaves a bad taste in their mouths. You know, was it because of the opposition to it
certainly did for Dr. Williams.
Dr. Williams
well, because he
was totally against it.
He wanted to stay in power.
But we want to explore that when we come back.
Okay.
Please stay with us. We'll be right back.
Do something.
Well, welcome back to the Issues Live. And before we go to that question about proportional representation and the way people seem to shun it, we have a caller on the line from Port of Spain.
Hello.
Good evening. Yes?
Good evening to the panel.
Good evening.
And we have two commissions. We had the Wooden Commission and we had the Higher Tally Commission. Now I remember as a small person that when Mr. Wooden brought to that commission, Dr. Williams went to town on him. And Dr. Williams wanted to equate communal representation with proportional representation. And as Mr. Cisse has rightly said, Dr. Williams wanted to rule. But Mr. Percy Cisse has a program on a radio station in which he is talking about American type constitution. Because I just said if he had a magic wand, he will put that immediately into effect. But we have to look at our history. And if we have that reform, we can't reinvent the wheel. We can consider both commission reports, Wooding and Higher Tally, and then get something and put it out to the nation. But both Mr. Pandey and Mr. Manning, as Mr. Cisse was saying, let Mr. Manning and Mr. Pandey elect a speaker for one specific purpose, for constitutional reform. And he also said, as Mr. Robinson is going to be off the scene just now, that now is a good time that with this interim period, we look at constitutional reform and switch to an executive by president. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we respond to this.
Neither Wooden or Higher Tally proposed an executive president.
No.
They did not propose a separate parliament.
Yeah, this
they
is
merely
something
wanted
completely new.
to tinker with the British system and the PR thing. They never really go. If they had, in fact, made that kind of recommendation and it was backed by the public, Williams would have been hard-pressed to oppose it.
Yes. We have a caller from Barataria. Welcome. Good evening.
Gentlemen.
Yes, good evening.
I just want to make one comment. I want to say that Mr. Pandey had a very good teacher in the name of Dr. Eric Williams. Thank you. Have a good night.
Has a very what?
Had a very good teacher.
He had a good teacher.
I mean, I'm flattered, you know. I don't know if it's my age she's referring to.
I think what she's mixing up is the fact that obviously if you inherit this type of constitution, you will behave like the fella who produced it.
Okay. The question of PR. We spoke about the opposition to it by Dr. Williams and how he felt about, not yielding the power that he had and so on. But it is more than once we have heard that we should look at the vision rather than have one system of first past the post. We should have first past the post and PR. But what are the advantages of that?
Well, the advantages of PR is that you would give people. For example, the ONR, I think it was the ONR who got what, 80 or 90,000 votes in Trinidad.
Yeah,
They got
and
no
they don't
seats.
no seats.
You had the NAR who got 100 and something thousand votes, and they didn't get any seats either. So this is the whole reason for PR. PR gives an opportunity to a smaller group to get a certain number of,
that's right.
of votes and get a seat.
So it is more of a democratic
Well, that
process,
is
you
why
would say,
if
because
you have a House of Representatives with 72 seats in it, you then give everybody, every small group in Trinidad and Tobago, the Muslims, for example, may want to put certain people in there to represent their own interests.
Yeah.
So you will break up the idea of ethnic voting, and you would then give groups an opportunity to go in the parliament, like the Hindus will have a seats in, they will be able to elect people to parliament as Hindus, and others will as well, and you'll then get all in there debating what is good for Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah.
Were you
At
having
the end
some
of the
private consultations with Martin George? Because
Never.
this is exactly what he's proposing.
Never, never.
You know.
Maybe he's been reading the
Never.
papers.
Oh, I don't know.
well, the thing is,
This
based
head
on
here,
that
what
point-
comes out of this head is what is in there.
Yeah, but based on that point, if you look at from the 1987 Hayatali Commission, they gave you the figures which showed that in the 1981 election, the ONR got 91,704 votes, and under the first past the post system, they got 0 seats. However, they made a comparison to show that had it been under the proportional representation system, they would have gotten 9 seats. And the PNM, which had gotten 218,557 seats and votes and got 26 seats, instead, under PR, they would have gotten 20 seats.
Now you
So
see why
it's
Dr.
one,
Williams
a
is
more
opposed to it.
equitable
Yes,
distribution.
Yeah.
To give judgment to the point that is being made, the strength of this country lies in the diversity of the people of this country. The continued willingness to have greater strength would be in the same empirical direction.
But so far, this diversity is
and the House is the House of Representatives. So we are paying homage to the diversity without reflecting it in Parliament.
the House of Representatives.
That's true.
Okay, we have a caller from Caroni. Thanks for holding. Good evening. Caroni, are you still there? Caroni. Okay, perhaps he... I think we have a caller from Tobago. Good evening. Yes, good evening. Okay, are you there? I think there's a little telephone that dropped or something. But further on the question of PR and so on, we are hearing about a bigger parliament, 72 people.
Yeah.
I think in Martin George's proposal, you were saying that
41,
you were saying
I suggested
41,
41.
and you were saying that people should come from the business community.
I would say that the additional
manufacturing,
5.
various
so this is
interests.
Talking about a nominated system.
Right. Now,
Yeah,
this
I
is
don't want any
another-
nominated people
This
in
is
there.
another construct that we can look at. The point is, no one is saying that, look, this is what it has to be. But the point is, I think at this juncture, we need to examine all the options, look at the entire spectrum. Let us decide which one we want, take it and go forward, because this country is too beautiful and too good to be wasted as it is being now.
Do you see a national consultation
Definitely,
coming
you
up?
have to consult the people on it. You have to, first of all, you have to educate them about what it is and what are the different versions that you want to present, and let them decide exactly which seems more compatible.
You
to
know,
them.
it is interesting. I mean, a news release was sent out today pertaining to the International Court of Justice, and one of the points the coordinator of the coalition for the International Court of Justice was making in a letter to President Robinson was that in the election of international jurists to the court, the government representatives of some kind or the other have been complaining that there's not enough transparency in the selection of these people, in the whole process, and that there needs to be public consultation to decide on who these people should be. Now you're talking about the selection of jurists. We are talking about the selection of people who are going to run this country for 5 years or 10 years and so on, and all the public does is go to the polls every 5 years and go through a process that we now say is tainted. So that there is the,
There's no will of the people in Trinidad. There's really no will of the people.
This is the question I'm asking.
And I think it's very, that is the critical point that you are making. You should be a panelist.
I'm sorry.
No, because it's how do you measure objectively as possible the will of the people? Because even in the judicial system, as my learned friend here would know, on certain issue you will duck a certain judge and you will try to bring your case before another judge, not because of any favoritism, but what his ideas are emotionally that would drive the decision that you want. The maximum transparency that you will get is the will of the people for the election of people who are to be in that House of Representatives.
Okay.
And we don't have that now.
Okay, we have a caller from Tobago, a very expensive call. Yes, we are going to hear you now, caller from Tobago, I hope.
Yes, good night.
Yes, okay, good night.
I want to say good night to the panel.
Yes?
There's a very burning question I would like to ask Mr. Moonan. He elaborated very much on the decision of the president for electing the PNM into office. I would like him to tell me, if he were in the position, would you like to have a prime minister who was performing a very dangerous move to the nation, like a dictator to the nation, which would jeopardize not only himself and his followers, but the nation as a whole? Would you like to have that person to represent you and on that occasion, in that manner, as a dictator, doing what he wants, have no respect for his colleagues, have no respect for even the president of the nation, doing just what he wants, when he wants, and telling you that you have to do so, and have to do so. Would you like to have that person to represent you?
I will take the question and answer it very frankly. As the president of the country, I would act in accordance with the rule of law. And as the rule of law stands up to tonight, it is, I would have the recitals to the Constitution guide me, but I would look closely and marry the Interpretation Act to the different sections of the Constitution. I have already quoted it. I need not repeat it to you. And wherever that took me, that will be the basis of my decision. And I wouldn't want to know who then becomes the prime minister there. That is not my rule as the president of the country.
Okay, we have El Dorado on the line. Good evening, El Dorado. Hello, yes?
Yes, I agree with Dr. Moonan in that I agree with Dr. Moonan in that from a common sense point of view, the concept of democracy, in my view, means that the majority of people should have a say. Since we had a situation of 1818, it is my view that what the president did, it allowed the Tunapuna seat, which was 210 votes more. Those people had a greater say than 20,000 more people, and the only reason is because the other people were located in different locations. But I just had one question to ask. Before someone crosses the floor, is it necessary for Parliament to be convened? Thank you, good night.
Before someone crosses the floor.
You have to have a floor before you can cross it. You have to have a parliament before you can cross the floor.
Well, I mean, I think what he's trying to find out is whether in the present scenario, before Parliament is convened, if somebody could go across either from the PNM to the UNC, or UNC to the PNM. Switching
allegiance from one to the other. And then Mr. Manning or Mr. Pandey can go to the president and say, I now have a majority.
That's
right. And I want to be appointed prime minister. that is what could happen. What happened in the case of Griffith and thing, they crossed the floor because they were already parliamentarians and they crossed the floor.
But you know, given the fragile nature of the politics, you know, it would not be surprising if in the trip between wherever the agreement takes place and the road to the president's house, the guy changes his mind. You know, and you find...
Given the history of politics in Trinidad and Tobago, it's not impossible at all.
But that is why we have to move away from the present system completely, because we'll only have a continuous repeat of this. We've had this repeat going on along. This crisis has not come about today, you know. This has been going on for a pretty long time, but the people were never concerned about it because there was always a government in there, but that government was moribund. It couldn't really effectively govern the country or change the constitution or do anything that we needed to do in this country. So the people just went along with this until now they've run into a roadblock and they don't know which way to go.
And now we are forced to deal with it.
And you have two men on whom you have to depend to decide this matter. And as I say, they both have a special individual interest to preserve. And that is what is causing the problem.
Okay, we have another caller from Caroni. Good evening. Welcome to the Issues Live.
Good evening.
Yes?
I would like to direct this call to Mr. Munan. He mentioned Nigeria, which is a country...
Before you continue, could you please turn down the volume? Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Could you please turn down the volume on your set?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, he mentions Nigeria, which is a nation, contains over 250 nations. And in that country, the Arthur Lewis model of constitutional democracy has been established. Why is it that no one so far has mentioned Arthur Lewis' name, who is a preponderant of the constitutional democracy, which would establish and give the various ethnic groups and the ethnic minority access to decision-making, which must be equally available to all interests and groups in a polity, and establish that equality of treatment to all groups. Why is the Arthur Lewis model being looked at seriously, which has worked in a place like Nigeria, which contains over 250 nations? Thank you. Good night.
Okay, thank you very much. And we have another caller from Caroni. Good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Yes?
I say to the panel, I think Mr. Pandey should call election after a few months and settle some issue.
You're saying Mr. Pandey should call elections?
No, Mr. Malin, sorry. Mr. Malin.
Okay. All right.
So all this thing is going on in the country, everybody in this deadlock and this issue and this thing going on here, everybody call it, and done his whole thing.
But let me ask you a question. If he calls elections and we go back to 1818, what then happens?
Eh?
If we go back to the 1818 scenario, what happens?
Well, the people make a decision. It's not 1818 something to go past. Mr. Pandey will be no Mr. Malin. If it's 1818, it's one, 1718 or something like that.
Okay, thank you very much. But I think the caller is a little confused there.
Yes, but you see, that's exactly the point that I've been saying, that, you know, there is nothing to show us that it's going to change very much. The demographics of the country are not going to change overnight. So therefore, it's quite likely, even if elections are called next month, 2 months, that we may come back with an 1818, and that's a reality we need to face and accept before we rush headlong into elections without doing some serious constitutional reform.
All this constitution has provided us is with arrogance and corruption over the years. It has provided us with nothing else. And the reason for that is that we put all the power in the constitution in the hands of one person. That person can manipulate the whole society. He can manipulate the races in the society. He can spend the money in order to do it. The money in the treasury, he can spend it to do that. So if we don't bring an end to that, we will be running straight into a wall and we won't be able to do anything in the future. And we let these two men decide that? No. The people must stand up and say, hey, the two of you, it's time for you to cut this out. And it's time for you to sit down and give us a new constitution. And the more people say that, and the more these programs say the more quickly that they will get the message, sooner or later.
Yeah, there must be the popular support for it. And once that is made clear, then I think they will have no choice but to look at it.
Okay, let's say if Piti Valley will support that. Piti Valley, are you there?
Yes.
Yes.
Are you hearing?
Yes.
isn't it about time that we revise the number of seats that are being contested? In 1956, there were 24 seats. In 1961, I believe it went to 30. In either 71 or 76, it went to 36 seats. Since then, the population must have increased by at least 15%. How is it we are still contesting the same number of seats for far larger population? Is this one of the bones of contention that some country areas have far too many people in the constituency?
Well, gentlemen.
No, there is a system and a format by which the EBC is bound.
That's right.
And it clearly distributes the areas in accordance with that system.
Yeah.
And that is by law, and they have to follow it. The question that arises, though, is are we going to continue to be concerned about just who wins the election? This has been the problem.
And who wins the seat?
Or who wins the seat.
Yeah.
And that person now becomes a person not there by the will of the people, simply because we are on an election campaign for the rest of our lives.
That's right.
Yeah, and the only concern, people say, well, if we give some more seats here, somebody will win. But this is not about somebody winning. This is about where the country goes.
That's right.
To educate the caller, I would ask the caller to go to the Constitution and look at Section 71 and the two following sections and try to think through the constraints that there are under those sections of the Constitution in relation to what Mr. Cesare is saying.
Gentlemen, we have just about 5 minutes again on the program. I want to ask you, given the fact that there is quite a bit of acrimony, bitterness, we have seen where the politics may be heading for the most basis of whatever. Given all of that, the gap between the PNM and the UNC in terms of getting together and discussing keeps widening by the minute. We now have issues like the beach school.
Yes.
People are saying one thing, another party is saying something else, and the children are there. And, a whole lot of things are happening. We have the issue of the probes that are taking place, the threats that we hear of jail and arrest and lockup. Do you think it is realistic at this point to expect Mr. Pandey and Mr. Manning to get back around the table to talk about constitutional reform as an objective for convening the parliament?
Clearly, they
is that a realistic
Clearly, they won't do it of
expectation?
their own volition. The thing is, I mean, as Percy has said, and I fully endorse that, they are only seeking their narrow interests. So the thing is, it has to be collective pressure from the people to say, look, regardless of which party you may belong to, which party you may support, at the end of the day, let us all sit down and look at the good of Trinidad and Tobago. Because if we don't stop this rot soon, it can consume us all. And the thing is, the two leaders obviously will not do it on their own. We, the people, have to start taking decisions. We have to start standing up and making our voices be heard, because they will not do it.
The constraint is you don't change cultural values overnight. The experience is it takes 800 years to do that. It was Charlemagne in Europe, 800 BC, to where they are now, that reflects the interests of the people. So we have, that was my point from the very beginning. We have to see with what we can work with and how to get there. And we have something important that we can work with, which I share with Mr. Cesare, is the diversity of our people. I'm sure you would see when roll is called in a secondary or a primary school, who answers sometime to the name John, or who answers to the name Singh. We are in that direction. How do we drive it?
And how do we drive it?
Well, as far as I am concerned, we have to continue to press for it. I mean, my name is not Pandey and my name is not Mani. My name is Percy Cizere, citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. I think I have a responsibility to do what I'm doing and to say what I'm saying. And if every person in Trinidad and Tobago start to recognize that they have that responsibility, these two people will start to look up and say, but wait a minute, we're here alone. The people gone and leave us.
That's right.
You understand me?
Right.
But if we say consistently in a negative manner that all we need to do is to recognize that it is impossible to do it because these two fellas wouldn't do it, my God, I mean, this is, these two people are not the country.
And the thing is, we have certainly had instances in our history and recent history too, where the public came out against something and the government had to bend. The Public Order Act was a case in point.
Exactly.
Yes.
And you see, the thing is, a lot of the polls, pre-election polls, have shown that there's a significant section of the population which they refer to as NOTA, none of the above. They really are not interested in the PNM or the UNC. And the thing is, these are the people who sometimes don't go out and vote at all. But these are the people who have to start making their voices heard, saying that, look, we need to change the system. And the thing is, once that pressure is brought to bear upon the leaders, we keep it going until it is achieved.
All right, gentlemen, I want to thank you very much. We have run out of time, and the panel has spoken. The challenge is out there to both the people and the politicians to get together and do something about this present situation. The talk is constitutional reform. Let us get something that works for Trinidad and Tobago. So we'll continue the discussion another time. Please keep looking at the channel. We'll let you know when that discussion will take place again. Thank you and good night. Well, a very pleasant evening to everyone out there, and welcome once again to the Issues Alive. I am Errol Pilgrim, and less than 2 days from now, the eyes of the world will be on Trinidad and Tobago to see what level of maturity our politicians will or will not employ to deal with a situation that has no precedent in the Caribbean and perhaps the entire Commonwealth. That situation, of course, is where neither of the two political parties in the House of Representatives commands that clear-cut majority that is the basis on which the House is able to function. This evening, we want to look at that situation in the context of what is likely to take place in that August Red House chamber on Friday, and perhaps with a view to seeking out prescriptions by which the possibility of hung parliaments can be avoided or at least minimized in the foreseeable future. And I have with me, once again, a very distinguished panel here this evening to discuss that situation. First of all, let me welcome heartily Mr. Hector McLean, who is a former Speaker in the House of Representatives. Present, welcome, Mr. McLean. On his right, of course, no stranger to the program and to the studio, Dr. Sastry Moonan, who is a political scientist, and he has lent some of his wisdom, brought some of his experience and knowledge to bear on he's a man of many parts. I see you frowning when I say political scientist. But welcome again, Dr. Moonan, to discuss this very important and significant topic here this evening. On Dr. Moonan's right is Mr. Martin George, who is an attorney at law and who was a guest on a previous program to deal with a similar topic. And he has written extensively in the press about what is taking place with respect to the politics of this country at the present time. Very pleasant welcome to you. Later on in the program, well, perhaps after the next 10 minutes, the first 10 minutes or so, we'll be opening up the telephone lines, and we ask you to be as concise as possible so we can get as many calls in as possible. But let me get something out of the way at the very first. Over the past few days, the spotlight has been particularly on one parliamentarian in the person of the Barataria San Juan representative, Dr. Fuad Khan, who has made several statements in the media. A lot of people are confused by some of what he has been saying, but essentially he is saying that on Friday he is going to exercise his right to vote according to his conscience. That has been interpreted in several ways. Some people think it to mean that he is possibly going to side with the PNM in trying to elect a speaker. And of course, he has come out and not really committed himself to that position, but he says he's voting according